Honda's original Africa Twin is one of the most fondly remembered bikes of the modern era. But is it a good bike? How does it stack up to modern competition? And more importantly, are modern adventure bikes headed in a good direction? Welcome to the very first episode of Retro vs. Modern. We spent 2 days riding around Wales, around the hills and the green lanes and all the kind of roads that we use a lot to test. And the outcome has been something that I think really surprised both myself and Chris. I think the general consensus was that it really showed up a lot of things we didn't expect it to show up, and it kind of showed us a few things that have got a lot better in modern bikes.
I started riding off-road kind of 2002, 3, 4. I started byways and green laning, and I rode big traileys, so slightly overweight, soft off-road bikes that were styled to look pseudo Dakar machines and had varying degrees of off-road capability. Fast forward a couple of decades almost, and now we're at a place where adventure bikes are really highly developed machines. You know, the technology in them is incredible, and I think the big difference now is adventure bikes are seen as manufacturers' flagship motorcycles. In the 90s, when we had big traileys, they weren't a flagship bike, they were just another bike in the range. Whereas now, manufacturers are kind of pinning their badges against this adventure tag. So their adventure bikes are covered with their absolute top spec technology, the best traction control, the best ABS, the highest spec kind of gearboxes and chassis they can possibly fit to them, which is very different to how things were 20 years ago, the last time we were all riding adventure style bikes.
One of the biggest standouts and the biggest difference off-road is the size of the thing. The old bike is small and the riding position is quite upright. It's a little bit old school and a little bit weird, but generally the whole package makes for a really manageable bike. On top of that, everything about the old Africa Twin is obviously very manual. You have a cable throttle and a cable clutch and kind of dated style suspension, but all of that gives you an incredibly good connection to the bike and to the ground underneath. So it's very easy to feel what's going on, and the manageability of it and its capacity to tell you what it's doing make it a very nice, easy bike to ride off-road. And generally it has an overwhelming character of being incredibly encouraging. Whenever you look at something that you think might be a bit difficult, I always wanted to have a go, and it always got through really cleanly, and that generally applied to slow speed riding.
The new bike was perfect when you were on flowy trails. It just eats that stuff up and you can hit potholes and bumps in it and it's easy. The old bike, you have to work really hard to go at the same speed. Strangely, when we got onto the rough terrain, I had fully expected the old bike with its significantly lower weight to suck up the rough terrain and be really easy to throw around, but actually, you know, things have moved on in 30 years. 30 years worth of suspension technology means that the new CRF 1000L roars down that rough stuff and the suspension just sucks everything up. Where the old bike kind of crashes into all the stones and the suspension ties itself in knots and you end up with quite a nervous ride. Then when we took the bikes to some trails that weren't so fast and rough but were tight and technical, and you had to really fine-tune your line, get the wheels exactly where you wanted them, sometimes maybe hop between ruts, it flipped back the other way again. So then suddenly the weight of the new bike, the slight delay that you get, and in all honesty, having to learn how the dual clutch transmission worked affected that. That then took away from it, and the old bike was easy to jump on and flick about.
When you transition from riding off-road onto the road, the story was actually surprisingly similar. The new Africa Twin is quite clearly designed with a lot of road miles in mind, and the old Africa Twin feels like it was designed for the road to be the stopgap between getting off-road in different places. And that really shines through. The new Africa Twin, the engine is great on the road. It feels really strong, it pulls forever, it rides really quick, and it's really comfortable pulling tall gears. So you can kind of cruise along and use zero energy to ride quite quickly. The old bike is a big contrast. It's vibey, it doesn't really want to go over 60 miles an hour that much. It can go up to about 80, 85, but that's its limit. It's not real comfortable beyond there in any way. And even on twisty roads, that shines through.
Once you're used to the sort of huge imposing stance of the new bike, once you've got a way of getting your foot to the floor, actually the riding position on the road feels quite commanding. You feel, it's a cliched word, the commanding riding position, but you do feel sat right up in the air, loads of good view, and the same with the suspension setup. They've set the suspension really tall and it's like a magic carpet, so speed humps, potholes, you don't notice any of them. The older bike with its lower chassis and its shorter travel, cruder suspension crashes into the potholes, you feel the bumps. You know, that is a level of quality difference that really, really stands out when you ride the two bikes back to back.
The new bike just cruises along, but I didn't ever have an idea what the wheels are doing. There's no connection to the ground at all. It's kind of the same with the throttle. The throttle feels like there's not a lot of connection there. And the old bike was the opposite. All the time I really knew what was going on. The bike told you where the limit was way in advance and gave you plenty of warning. The new bike was the same as it was off-road. The limit is a bit more of a cliff.
So for nice flowing roads, easy riding, in terms of which do you prefer, the new bike I thought was miles better because it was comfier, it was smoother. The automatic setting on the dual clutch transmission meant you could just coast around and just really relax into the ride. The old bike was very mechanical, hard work, up and down the gears. It feels slow by comparison. Get into the tighter, twistier bends and the back lanes, and suddenly the old bike kind of comes alive, and that thing that we all love about riding bikes, that real feeling of control, the immediate power delivery off the throttle, the constant up and down the gears, the working. You really are working on the old bike, which actually has quite a nice feel to it, and you feel like you've earned every corner and every straight you're doing something. And then the size of the new bike and the height start to feel a little bit cumbersome as the road gets smaller.
For me, the one thing that stands out massively from the old generation bike to the new generation bike is that the manageability has been lost a little bit. The needle of what these bikes were designed for has changed dramatically. When Honda bought the original Africa Twin out, they really intended that bike to be used by people that wanted to go off-road, but maybe they needed to go a bit further to do it. And that really shines through, that the new bike feels like 80% of the intention is for people to ride it on road and to have some capacity to do gravel roads, bumpy gravel roads. And if you're a really confident rider, you can get it up some single track.
One thing's for sure is the old bike makes everyone smile. Every single person who got on the old bike at the first stop went, that is unbelievable. It's a really nice bike. And it flatters the rider up to a point when you start getting to the limit of its suspension ability. The new bike takes a little bit getting used to. We spent a lot of time trying to understand the riding modes and understand the DCT system. Once you got your head around that, it is a very capable machine. It definitely makes life hard work when you're at the edge of your ability. When it starts getting technical, the weight comes back and makes life hard.
For me, the other really big takeaway in this test is that I'd like a little bit of feeling back in bikes. For everything that the Honda has improved, we've lost a little bit of the feeling and the rawness of a bike. And that feedback as a rider, I think, is really important. It's an interesting dichotomy because I think I'm a really big fan of the technology that's come into bikes and how it's helping bikes move forward and move into the modern era. And in the adventure bike market, maybe that needle could start to move back towards bikes being a little bit more hardcore and a little bit more off-road focused.
Which one would I ride home today? I'd have a photo of the old one. If I had a short ride home through the woods, I'd take the old bike. If I had a long road home and I wanted to actually do some proper touring, the new bike in a heartbeat.
I hope you really enjoyed this test. We've had a brilliant time doing it. It's been one of the most interesting things we've done in a long, long time. And if you do like it, we've got plenty more of these videos coming. What we'd really like you to do is to tell us what the next comparison should be. Should it be Yamaha versus Yamaha, KTM versus KTM, BMW versus all the other millions of BMWs that have been good over the years? Where would you like us to go? If you've enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, give us a like, drop that comment down below. We're an independent magazine. We're supported by some sponsors and by our Patreon page. Our Patreon page, you can find the link for down below. And essentially, Patreon is an optional subscription service where you can help us keep making these videos for the long term. Otherwise, thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure doing this test. And remember, life's better when you're riding.